Baiba Braže is Latvia's foreign minister who joins me now from Washington, D.C. Madam Foreign Minister, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you met with the Secretary of State Rubio, and I want to ask you about that meeting in just a moment. But if you could respond with your reaction to what appears to be a very limited and not much detail-oriented potential ceasefire, specifically around the Black Sea.
Listen, as you rightly point out, first, thanks for having me. And as you rightly pointed out, there is too little information currently to really know what has been agreed or not, and what are the sort of parameters of a possible deal. So it's very difficult to comment on some things that we don't know. So I will restrain myself from doing that.
The fact, though, that it would involve U.S. Lifting some sanctions against Russia this early on into these negotiations tells you what, though?
Again, we don't know what is or what is not agreed or decided. And quite clearly, from our perspective, sanctions give a leverage in negotiations to the US side, to the Ukrainian side, to the Europeans. So there is something that we have to remember, both in terms of negotiation tactics, but also actually on degrading Russia's military capability, because that is one of the issues that need to be dealt with also in preventing a possible restart of the war. That currently we don't see Russia, we don't see any indication in Russia that they really are going for peace. Seriously, all the instruments of power, whether it's political, religious, military, economics, or anything else, is oriented towards war. So we welcome very much the effort of the President Trump and the administration, and we covered that in our meeting between the Baltic Foreign Ministers and Secretary Rubio, that we fully support those peace efforts. And of course, we are at the beginning of the process, and we need to maintain that calm and perspective that, okay, this is the start of the process, but it's not the end yet. And to achieve the sustainable peace, we have to have Ukraine that agrees on its own to various elements of a possible peace deal, but we also need constantly to pressure Russia to actually be truthful about the peace negotiations. So I think those elements have to be there.
You, along with the other Baltic NATO members, know firsthand exactly what it is like to be invaded and forced to be part of a country that you are not part of, obviously having been part of the Soviet Union for so many years and now a member of NATO. And they're on the front lines there, literally, physically. Your proximity to Russia is indeed so close. And you see the expenditure in terms of your GDP and the GDP of the other Baltic nations among the highest of NATO members. I believe you're at 3.5%, and you forecast to even spend up to 5% of GDP on defense in the near future. What were the conversations that you had that you can share with us with Secretary of State Rubio about your concerns as to Russia's longer-term aspirations? And this is an administration that has long been critical about the amount of investment European allies have been putting into their own defense. That can't be said about your nation and other Baltic countries. So give us, if you can, share any information you can about the meeting with the Secretary of State today.
Listen, first of all, the Baltic states are 107-year-old democracies. And yes, out of those 107 years, for 50 years, we were illegally occupied by the Soviet Union. And it was the United States, United Kingdom, and majority of the Western states that never recognized that Soviet occupation is legal. So we continued to de facto exist, and the euro continued working. Also, our embassies continued working here in Washington and London and other places. So it was that non-recognition of occupation policy, or Samuel Wales doctrine, that actually did provide also the legal basis for regaining independence in 1990. So today, the meeting with Secretary Rubio was quite excellent. There is no other word for that. As he said, as we agreed, we are perfect allies. We don't have any bilateral issues. We don't have any type of problems in our relationship that need solving. So all the countries on the border with Russia, starting from Norway to Finland to the Baltic states down to Poland and so on and so forth, Germany, have decided to raise defense budgets. But again, it's not just because we had the urge from President Trump's first administration, but actually because we have clearly seen the threat. Russia is a threat to the whole Euro-Atlantic security. It has the capabilities, the intent, but also it decided to attack a country in Europe. So we take our defense and security seriously, and we did thank President Trump and Secretary Rubio very much for their support to the Baltic states, for their clear commitment to NATO, for their clear commitment also to urge those who are not investing in defense as much as would be needed. And there are elements that we jointly work together to make sure we actually correct that. But so there are, I wouldn't say that it's European type of problem, because European allies are also quite different among themselves. And NATO is more than just European alliance. We also have Turkey, we have Canada, we have other allies. So it's a transatlantic alliance, and that transatlantic bond is very, very strong. So we thanked President Trump and Secretary Rubio for that.
You come at a very tense time, though, as I'm sure you have heard the news of this bombshell reporting and security breach of top administration officials and cabinet members discussing war plans and strikes against Yemen over an encrypted app called Signal. And in these discussions, as has been reported by a journalist, a reputable journalist here in the United States who had inadvertently been admitted into this chat group, the vice president himself said things along the lines of, "I hate bailing Europe out again." The Secretary of Defense says that he hates freeloading Europe. It is pathetic. So I know you said you had an excellent conversation with the Secretary of State. We should know that he too was on this chat group. What is your response to this type of characterization from a close ally?
Listen, I can't comment on Signal chat groups and, conversations happening there. We all make mistakes. Sometimes that happens. It's just, that's a reality. It's not connected to Signal. It can happen in real life. But I think everybody needs to sort of make their conclusions, and that is a lesson learned, I think, for everyone, that things can happen. The other part, again, on the European spending or spending of some European allies who are below what should be spent, there are pretty frank conversations ongoing. They don't need to be so public always. Again, we have joint NATO's defense plans. Those defense plans provide for certain capabilities that we all need for the new force structure of NATO forces, for other commitments. So that is something that we all have vested interests in across the alliance to reach. And that is where everybody needs to contribute. So pretty straightforward. You saw that also at the European Union level, which is not a political military alliance, but it's a totally different type of organization. But there have been decisions that have been made which will contribute to that. So again, between European countries at large and the US, I think our relationship, both in trade, in investments, in trade of services, is the strongest we have seen. We are each other's largest investor by far, 400 billion or more. We have biggest trade relationship among all trade partners in the world. US trade of services to Europe is the highest that it has been. So that relationship obviously has its ups and downs. That's normal among the partners. It's not like we don't have those type of issues within Europe. Of course we do.
Foreign Minister,
but again,
in the limited time we do have, and I'm only raising this because these are among the top advisors and trusted members surrounding the president himself. This is separate from the WhatsApp chat group. In a public interview, Steve Witkoff, one of his top advisors who's met with Vladimir Putin twice, just said over the weekend when asked if you think Russians want to march across Europe, he said 100% not. Do you share that certainty that Vladimir Putin doesn't want to continue marching across Europe?
Listen, as a rule, we don't comment on some comments by other officials because, again, everybody has a right of their opinions. So that is something that I never do. But in the same time, of course, taking that aside, about Russia, I already shared our skepticism about Russia's intentions. I keep reminding that the root causes of the war in Ukraine, of their aggression in Ukraine, need to be eliminated. Listen, those root causes are Russia's imperial sort of attitudes and colonial policies. If you look the way they conduct their policies in Africa through the so-called Africa Corps, access of resources, the trying to sort of take it out and take to Russia the gold from Sudan and, you know, other natural resources from elsewhere, or the objectives in Ukraine, which was actually to make sure that Ukraine doesn't have its own independent decision making.
Yeah,
I think we just have to be quite aware that this is what Russia wants, and we shouldn't let them get it through the stalks.
In your opinion, not a territorial dispute then, as Steve Witkoff has described it. Madam Foreign Minister, thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And again, we are all for peace, for lasting peace.